Hey guys, Justin here with JHart Modelworks. So, in the review video for Gallery's Mobius 0.3 airbrush, which I will have released probably right before this video, you guys will have seen me prime and paint up a very large, odd-shaped kind of chassis piece. That chassis piece belongs to a fully 3D printable model kit of the BAC Mono. This kit was designed by Ollievizzle, so I'm going to go ahead and put a link down below to his Colts 3D page. Ollie is an amazing designer. He does some fantastic stuff. He's got full kits as well as a lot of parts, just really cool stuff. He did the Aerial Atom, which is another one of these like fun little track toy single seat cars. He's also done the Vector. So if you guys have seen or bought Iceman Collection's Vector car, that is actually Ollie's design work. So this kit is one of the big reasons why I got the new Saturn III Ultra printer that I got. I wanted something larger, something that I could use to print up larger things like full kits instead of just the small parts that I typically do. Because I have Ollievizzle's Aerial Atom kit, which I got when I got the Photon Mono, and it doesn't fit well on that printer. And I got this kit, and I really wanted to build both of those. So after, printing up that chassis piece, actually I printed up the whole kit testing out the Saturn III, and I was like, well, I'll build this eventually. When it came time to do the review video and record the footage for that on the airbrush, I just decided, I'll do this big chassis piece. It'll be easy to see, no biggie. After doing that, I was like, you know what, let's go ahead and just paint up the entire kit and get it all ready because we had the foundation repair coming up. This was about a week. I recorded that footage about a week before we had to leave to get out of the house for the foundation. I knew I was going to be sitting in the hotel for quite a while, just kind of twiddling my thumbs, and I figured it would be cool to have this kit all ready to go, and I could just sit down and build it. Now, this kit has no instructions to it. There is a video from Tom from the Scale Modeling channel. I'm sure everyone knows Tom. Tom is a major YouTuber out there in the modeling community. And he's a really good YouTuber, really good instructional videos. I found there were some spots in his video that either were missing or were a little kind of vague, because there are a few things that this can be a slightly tricky kit to get together right. So I wanted to do like my own step-by-step build video on this to kind of fill in some of those gaps and just give a nice, concise, step-by-step build video on this, to kind of help out anyone who may be struggling with it. Because there are a couple of places in this kit that are kind of fiddly, and there's some things that really need to go together right in order to get it to look right and to sit right. This is also probably going to be quite a long video because I'm not going to break this up into sections. I'm just going to do the whole thing as a build. So go ahead and grab a snack and a soda, and I'm going to get the camera flipped around, and we're going to start putting this thing together. Alright guys, what you are looking at is the entire 3D printed BAC Mono kit from Ollievizzle. I've already printed, prepped, and painted everything, so we are just going to be working on the assembly today. I do want to take a moment to apologize for the poor lighting and the terrible video setup. This was shot while I was in the hotel during the foundation repair. The audio was so bad with all the noise from the trucks going down the freeway that I had to re-record all the audio via voiceover once I got home. Everything here was sprayed with the Gallery's Mobius 0.3 airbrush. So far that brush is still doing a great job. These two parts make up your transmission and rear suspension. These are the first two parts you want to install in the chassis. Now there is a short one and a long one, and they should snug up just like that. Now there's a pin on one side, there's a hole on the other, and then there's this large recess. That recess should wrap around this post right here. Not this one, this one's for the engine mounting. Also, there's a relatively flat part, this is the top, and then this curved part is the bottom. Now these are the rear springs. I'm going to show you where these go with the transmission out of the chassis because it's just a lot easier to see. But you can't install these until you have the transmission in place in the chassis, or you're going to end up breaking them off. There is a small round post inside that shallow recess. That needs to go in this hole right here. You also have a relatively flat surface on the end, and that is going to go right here on the transmission frame. So these should sit pretty much just like that. They're very small, they're very fiddly. It's going to be very hard to see when I go to put these in, so I wanted to show these here because I had to do a lot of research to figure out where these go. We'll start by applying some CA glue here on both sides of this mount post, as well as on both sides of the transmission. Then, starting with the short side, we're going to tuck the suspension arms under the back of the chassis, and you just kind of have to wiggle this into place. Then you need to lift the back end up over this lip and move it into the center like that. It takes a little bit of wiggling, but you should be able to get it to trap in. Then we want to take this one and do the same thing. Get the suspension in under the chassis, wiggle it back into place, lift the back end over that hump, and then these two should, yep, just like that, snap in together. Now hold that in place until the glue sets. Now we'll apply a little bit of glue onto this circle mounting point back here. I'm then going to apply a little bit right over here in this corner on the transmission frame. We're going to take our shock, make sure it's facing the right way. This little canister should go towards the inside. And then we'll carefully position this into place. And there's shock number 1. We're going to repeat this process for shock number 2. I find it's easiest to grab these with a very small tip pair of tweezers right here on the end. These are my hose ends with the small plastic tips. They do a great job of grabbing these small parts. There we go. Now from here, we're going to install our engine. This is the bottom, this is the top, and the pulleys need to face towards the front of the car. The fit on this was not incredibly tight, so I went ahead and applied some glue to the bottom of the pan and the flat back side of the engine. I'm going to press this down into place, and then I'm going to take my other thumb and I'm going to press back to make sure that it sits nice and flush up against the transmission. Now for the engine cover. This little bit faces out that way, otherwise it will interfere with this piece on the engine block. This is actually the intake. So we have a small oil cap, and as far as I can tell, that oil cap goes right here. Just like that. And then we have the exhaust. So the way this fits, this is going to sit down in right here, and there's a groove right alongside the side of the engine. Now it'll sit down right in like that, and the muffler sits in this channel here, and that's it, we're done. So I'm going to apply my CA glue. I'm going to get the exhaust set in place. And before this has a chance to dry, I want to dry fit my rear wing. I want to make sure that my exhaust is sitting exactly where I want it before it has a chance to set. We're going to go ahead and take that back off because there's some other things we need to assemble first. Next, we're going to install our tow hook. We'll put some CA glue down here. We'll then slide the tow hook down and in between these two little posts, and it should sit something just like that. We also want to install our radiators. We're going to put some glue on the chassis right here. There's an upper and lower arm on each one. The smaller arm goes on the bottom, the angled side points towards the outside of the car, and the venting faces forward. We're going to set that in place right like that. And now we'll glue in the one for the other side. I'm applying glue to the bottom of the chassis as well as to these two sides. Now I broke the bottom off of this one, but that's okay. No one's ever going to see it. Resin parts are fairly brittle. Sometimes things break. You could just reprint it, but I'm not going to. That gets our radiators in place. So the next thing are the front springs. When you are cutting these parts off the supports, do not cut these little nubs off. These are important. These parts should sit just like that. And they go right in that little recess. We'll put a little bit of CA glue right here in this hole. I'm also going to apply just a little bit right here on the frame, and we'll set it into place. We're going to repeat that for the other side. The little tab goes in that little hole. Then you just slot the shock down into place. Make sure it sits fairly straight. And the shock should sit at an angle that matches the angle of the edge of this chassis. While we're at it, let's go ahead and install our pedal box. That's going to go right down here. On the real car, the pedal box, the seats, everything is positioned, custom molded, and configured specifically for the owner. Next, before we put the body on, we want to assemble the headlights. These are our headlight assemblies. Now I've added some Bondic inside the openings to create the round lenses. There are 4 lenses on each assembly. This tiny one goes up towards the top. So this is going to be the right hand side. And it's going to sit right inside this recess here, just like that. Now Ollievizzle suggests that you print these out in 3 different sizes. Due to the varying nature of resin printers, sometimes these parts do not print out incredibly accurately scaled. So he suggests printing a set at 100%, another at 98, and another at 96. Now, I did not do that, and I just have one set at 100%, so let's hope these fit. We're going to apply some CA glue into the recess. So we're going to sit that lip right there inside that recess. And if we're lucky, the top will line up with the top of the fender. And if we're really lucky, when we put the body on later, it's going to sit right up against that headlight frame and everything will sit nice and flush. Fingers crossed. We're going to go ahead and repeat that process for the headlight on the other side. And our headlights are done. Okay guys, you're going to see that the seat is already sitting in place. I messed up and put the seat in first. It will be a lot easier if you do the steering wheel first, then the seat. So I'm going to go ahead and move the steering wheel footage ahead of the seat. So just pretend the seat isn't there for right now. Here's our steering wheel mount. There's a round side and a flat side. The flat side goes up against the underside of the body, and the long end goes into the back of the steering wheel. So we're going to be a little messy here. We're going to go ahead and dip the long end of the steering column into the glue, and then insert it into the back of our steering wheel. Now there should be a green button down here and a blue button up there. I don't have a green or blue paint marker from display, so they're just going to be white. I may come back in later and paint them blue and green. Now let's see if we can get this in there. We're going to apply a bit of glue to the flat side of these two mount posts. I'm going to slide this in just like this. And then we're going to drop it. Alright, we did manage to get that in. That would probably look a lot better if we had done that before, but that's what happens when you mess up. So do the steering column first. Alright, so here's our seat. I've gone ahead and added a 5-point harness in here. Now, Ollievizzle did an excellent job when he was designing the seats. There are holes already in place for the harnesses, which makes that super simple. The fit is really kind of loose though. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to apply some glue on this edge. You're also going to put some glue along these sides here. I'm just going to take this top edge of this seat. I'm going to line it up back in there, and then we're just going to line everything up and press it into place. And you're just going to have to hold it because there's no real letting loose of this until that glue sets. So that's going to wrap up the interior. Alright guys, let's go ahead and finish up assembling the body so we can get this on the chassis. So in these two holes are some engine covers. Now I've seen reference photos of these in black, I've seen them in carbon fiber, and I've seen them in mesh. So these are the parts. And these should fit right up in here. So you have a straight side and you have an angled side. There's a straight and angled side that matches on the body. Now you're going to say, Justin, those aren't painted, and you're absolutely right. So I'm not actually going to use these. What I did, however, was use them as a shaping block. I took some of this photo etch mesh, I laid it up in here how I wanted it. I then used the appropriate part for each side, and I gently pressed it in over and over until I ended up with a perfectly formed mesh cover. So I'm going to apply some glue to each of these sides. I'm then going to insert my mesh, preferably without gluing it to meat. And now we have our mesh engine cover. So if you want to do the mesh engine cover like this, it is still a good idea to print these parts out so that you can use them to form that cover and get it to form to the correct shape instead of just having a flat piece of mesh laying under there. Now we're not going to use the mesh for the other side. For the other side, we're going to use this piece. This piece is the mount for the optional air intake pod. On the actual car, this pod is an optional extra that goes on the left side of the car. So Ollievizzle included it as an optional set of parts. So you can install the side intake pod, install the engine cover part, or make a mesh cover like I did for the other side. I'll put some glue on the mounting ridge on each side. And that should drop right into place. It should sit about like that. It sits at a slight angle that matches the side of the car. Now for the moment of truth. You're going to have two little clips, one on each side of the body. Do not break these off when you're pulling the supports off. However, if you're going to dry fit this a lot, you might want to trim these down just a little bit before you cure it. Don't cut them down much, just a little to make it easier to take on and off, because these clips hold the body really snug. I'm going to take this side, we're going to slide it in under the lip of the fender here, and you have to take the other side and you kind of have to pry the chassis very carefully and nudge it into place until it drops in. When it drops, it will drop in and lock itself into place. Now, I'm not going to glue this in place. You could, if you wanted to, but I'm not going to because I have a feeling that this needs to slide back and forth a bit once we get the rear wing on. So I don't want to have the body glued in place just yet. I like having the flexibility to be able to move this around. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of glue onto the rear wing on both sides here. And I'm going to also add a little bit on both sides of the chassis here. This is another one of those parts where you've got to kind of stretch things into place. The first thing you want to do is slide the back end over your exhaust, get that side in, and you're going to come in and you're going to pull the back side of the chassis open and slide it into place. You want to make sure that it sits right and that you don't get glue anywhere. Alright, and then like I said, there's a little bit of wiggling that we need to do to get that body into position. And this is not absolutely perfect, but that's kind of the way things go with these 3D printed models like this. These 3D printed models are not as accurate as, say, a styrene plastic model. Sometimes there are little fit issues here and there you kind of have to do a bit of wiggling with. Sometimes you have to resize and reprint things, but this kit from Ollievizzle is really nice. It really is. For the most part, things fit really well. Now that the body's in place, we're going to add some glue to the top edge of that side mount and attach the intake pod. And you want the opening to face the front of the car. Alright, we are looking good. These are the mirrors. There's two different style of mirrors. There's this one and there's an optional one that has just a slightly different arm to it. Now you want to test fit these before you paint the body because you may need to drill this hole out slightly larger to make sure that they will fit. The way the printer printed these, it was a little snug, so I did actually go in with a small drill bit and I opened them up just a little bit. I forget what size drill bit I used. I am going to put a little glue on the end. Don't do that. And I'm going to slot that into the hole. A tiny bit of glue on the end again. And again, there's a small hole right there. That one's still a little snug and I don't want to force it and break it. So mine's going to sit just like that. And that's going to take us to the wheels. So last but not least, we have our wheels. These are the optional wheels. There are two different wheels in the kit. There's the standard wheel and the optional one we have here. The optional wheel is a two-piece setup with a separate insert that slides into these little notches in the barrel. We also have our tires, which have some really nice lettering on the sides, really nice tread patterning, and the back side is where I put all of my supports, so that's all kind of janky. Ignore that. And then we have our brakes. These are the front brakes. The rear brakes have an e-brake on them. You can kind of see it in there. Now, while messaging back and forth with Ollievizzle, one of his suggestions was to take a 2mm drill bit and drill these to make sure that they will fit over the posts. I did not have an issue with it. Your mileage may vary, so that's something you might want to do, and I would do it before you cure them. So to start things off, we're going to take our brake. We're going to apply a little bit of glue on that little edge right there. You don't need much. Now this side has more detail to it than the other side, so this is our outside. You want to be a bit more accurate with these, so that's what we're going to do, is we're going to get our glue right onto these slots. And then take your insert and drop it right in. Put a little bit of glue on the sides of the barrel. You don't need much. Again, I'm going to end up making a mess. And you're going to take the bad side down, make sure your good side is facing up, and slide it down over your wheel assembly, and that is your wheel and tire. Now to mount these, we're going to put a little bit of glue on this flat surface right here. You just kind of want to line the centers up as best as you can. This is a game of positioning them where you think they need to go, because there's no actual locating to these. If there were two things that I could make changes to on the kit, it would be better seat locating and better locating for the wheels, more precise and accurate locating for the wheels to make sure you get them centered right. There are a right and a left side to the rears. If you point the brake straight towards the front of the car, the emergency brake should sit up a little bit according to the reference photos that I looked at. Alright guys, so that is a wrap on the BAC Mono 3D printed model from Ollievizzle. I will have a link to his Cults 3D page down in the description below. Check him out. He's got some amazing parts as well as other full 3D printable models such as the Aerial Atom, which I'm looking forward to building soon. This has been a really fun kit. Everything went together really well. It sits really nicely. It sits flush on all four of its wheels. It's just an awesome little build. So if you've got a 3D printer, print one of these up or get one of your friends to print one of them up for you. And hopefully this video will help you in assembling yours because again, there are no instructions for the kit. Thanks for watching guys. I always appreciate you watching the videos. I apologize again for the conditions of the video for this one as I was doing it out of the hotel. But again, thanks for watching and I will catch you on the next one.